Today came in a request by my English teacher to cover the subject of social justice, specifically the process by which jurors are selected. She most likely posed the question because we recently finished our true crime novel, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and the serial podcast, following the story of Adnan Syed. The depiction of juries in movies and television shows often makes them out to be biased, but is that truly as it is? Would the government allow it? Honestly, from what I knew before researching the topic, the way the jurors were chosen seemed fair as long as it is done well. The jury selection system is what is to be blamed for the bias in the jury and not the persons that are biased. But I digress, so jumping right into it, I'll let one of my friends that helped create the American Juror website explain how jurors are selected from service in the courts.
Thanks for having me. I'd like to start my spiel by also saying thanks to you for taking the time to listen and learn about being a juror, as you are most likely to be one at least once in your life. Now to explain, the jurors are chosen from the state to act as a kind of judge to trials and declare a verdict. Remember, the jury must consist of people from the same state and district to be considered for the jury. You also have to have some form of identification and be a registered voter. At that point, it is random when you get picked to report. That is really all it is to it.
Thank you. That was informative. I just have one question. Is it important to be judged by people from the same state and district?
Of course, it is. It's the Sixth Amendment after all. It says that, quote, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial, by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, end quote.
Thanks again. Check out his site for more information. Now, I would like to draw attention to two things in the Sixth Amendment. The jury of peers, as it is called, are formulated from the state and district that the trial is taking place in. That is a fantastic thing. The people that are from the same community are more likely to share the same view on certain crimes which reflect upon the defendant's actions within that community. The jurors then will be able to hand down a more just verdict for the place that it happened. Secondly, the impartial jury part. It's important to stress this part to continue to have a fair trial. With a biased jury, the verdict of the case is already decided without the trial happening. The term bias defined by the Lettric Law Library is that, any mental condition that would prevent a judge or juror from being fair and impartial. This is a bad thing because the verdict will not reflect the ideas of the community. It might surely reflect the community's idea of the person, whether for good or bad, but it is more important to show the thoughts on the crime, not the character of the person. The jury for the Adnan Syed case seems to have done this well, as in reflecting the ideas of the community on the evidence provided and not the character of Adnan. It was repeatedly said in the serial podcast that Adnan was an upstanding person that was not able to commit such atrocities as murder. If the people that believed those things about Adnan were on the jury, it would be certain that Adnan would be acquitted. The actual jury was only known to have been provided the evidence without too much knowledge of the disappearance of Hay. The latter jury is a more just. They solely made their decision off of the evidence provided and were not swayed by the belief that Adnan was incapable of murder. An example of a biased juror can be found in Cold Blood. On page 273, the statement made by one of the jurors is clearly indicative of bias. He said that in the case of capital punishment, ordinarily I'm against it. But in this case, no. This occurred during the voir dire examination, which is part of the jury selection process as a way to find out if someone is biased or not. The man was not removed from the process and later selected as a juror. This shows the problem with the selection of juries. It is not necessarily that the people are always biased, it's more that they are allowed in, even though prejudice has been established. Now, with those two different ideas of the good and bad of the jury selection process, I have another friend willing to talk about what the government is doing to combat this issue. Here is Justice Anthony M. Kennedy.
Thank you. I just want to quickly talk about the recent court ruling in 2017 that specifically pertained to racial prejudice in the jury. I wrote in the ruling that, a constitutional rule that racial bias in the justice system must be addressed, including in some instances, after the verdict has been entered, is necessary to prevent a systemic loss of confidence in jury verdicts. The need has always been there to prevent racial injustice, but it was mostly covered by the Sixth Amendment, and the voir dire process. Well, because of the court cases that were shown to have bias, we as a court have decided that there is a necessity for more strict examination, and for post-verdict examinations to be conducted, as per my writing. We want to make sure that we don't allow bias into the justice system by being able to stop it from getting in, and even addressing the issue after the court adjourns.
Thank you. There you have it, folks. It is not that the court want to have biased juries. By all means they are all about being fair. It is more the problem of the identification of bias is not clear in some cases, but the court continues to adapt, and try to uphold the standard of giving everyone a fair trial. My idea of the way that the courts choose their juries proved true. The problem does lie with the jury selection process, because that is the system that is too loose as to allow bias into the courtroom. People will be undeniably biased, but it is up to the justice system to keep it out. We as the people must also help by not being so prejudiced. But it is a good thing that the courts understand this so that they can work to make a better, more just system,